All right, what's up, guys? Let's see. All right, good morning, everybody. Today is Friday, March 1st. It's the first day of March, and also a Friday. Looking at the daily bias for US 30, bullish, daily bias for gold bullish, daily bias for EU bullish, daily bias for the US dollar bearish. Um, so just as a reminder, on Fridays, I'm working on not trading on Fridays. But before I get to that point, I noticed that the optimal or some of the good times to trade on Fridays is post 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Um, but anyway, let's just see what we find. And especially the other thing to think about is the zones, how we've started using the zones. So I know previously we weren't looking at that. We just started using those like this week. So we'll see if that gives us like an idea of where price is likely to go, especially on manipulation days like Friday. But we'll see how it goes. But anyway, so for US 30, looking at what we have here, we currently have a test and rejection that's currently running. So this is a test, this is rejection entry, but turn on the zones indicator, you'll see that we're in between no man's land, right? So we do have a test and rejection entry here for US 30. But of course, we would want to know anybody who took this trade, where would they be achieving a 1:1 risk to reward before we even think of taking it? So that's the zone where somebody would achieve a 1:1 risk to reward. Also looking at the zones, right? So this is the zone right here. This is the SAR zone. So this is the test and rejection entry. So it already validated. It validated pre-New York. So again, we wouldn't want to be trading in no man's land. So that's why the optimal place to take the trade, we go ahead and look for where we have overlapping demand zones, since we're looking to buy. So we have this zone here, or we have this zone here. So in this instance, what I would be looking for is for price. Let me turn off this zones indicator since it has already showed us. So I'd be looking for price to come down here. And then if price comes down here, I would look at the crossover indicator within the breakout scanner that I'd showed you guys. So we'll just wait to see if this comes in. On the 30-minute time frame, nothing for US 30. Let's see, 65, 90 to 70. Yeah, so on the 30-minute time frame, nothing to look at. Um, So we'll see if this happens. On gold, we don't have anything. We have the SAR zones on the 15-minute are right here. Nothing on the 30 minutes, so I don't see any trade on gold today. EU, again, I'm not really looking to be trading EU. It's just a slow-moving asset. Too much of a slow-moving asset for me, unless I take like the hourly and 4-hour time frame entries or the momentum entries, but the basic SAR entries, I think I'll move away from trading EU. Here on the 30-minute time frame, there is a test and rejection based off of this entry or this zone right here, this SAR zone. And it's a trade I was looking at before the market opened. So what we would want here, if we turn on the zones indicator, we want to see where the buyers are sitting. So for this particular trade, if I were to take it, I would want to take it if price comes back to this zone. So something of this sort, like this, and then like that. So I turn off the zone. So the zones just shows you where are the buyers sitting. So I wouldn't take this trade if price comes back to the SAR zone. I will take it where the buyers are seated, which is down there. So if this does validate, and again, I'm looking, possibly this may validate later on, 12 p.m. Post noon Eastern Standard Time. So this is a test and rejection buy, which already validated. And then, of course, here, we want to know where somebody would be achieving a 1:1 risk to reward. So if price got to that person first before coming back down, we just go ahead and forget about the trade and wait for a new trade setup. So that's the zone right there. So what I would anticipate is price to come in here first before going back up there. On the hourly time frame, we have a possible break and continuation here on the hourly time frame, but that's in the next 20 minutes. So this is a pending break and continuation on US 30 right there. So yesterday we had some nice markups on US 30 based off of the zones indicator. And you can see if you were there, you could have seen the importance of waiting for price to come back to our zones. So we had this pending break and continuation here, and you can see if you took the buy when price came back to the SAR zone, you'd have automatically gotten stopped out. But price came back exactly, or just, I think this trade got missed by like 2 pips or something. Price came back all the way. We have a demand zone here on the hourly, or we had, yeah, this demand zone right here, this block, because it was a demand zone within a demand zone. So this block right here. So price came back all the way there, missed the entry that we'd marked up on the live session just by like 1 or 2 points, and then spiked all the way up. So this again is the same thing that I would anticipate for today. So this is a pending break and continuation entry right here based off of that SA. Same zone as yesterday. And I would expect the same thing to, ideally the same thing to happen. So the entry would be there, but what I would expect is something like this, come back there, and then go back there. So the same thing that happened yesterday on US 30, even though this trade validates based off of this SAR zone, I will wait for price to come to that demand zone that's identified using the zones indicator. But now more than ever, you can see we have this huge candle that created this huge supply zone. So even that demand zone from yesterday is now covered by a supply zone. So even for today, what I would do, I would move this buy area even lower down here. So lower within this other demand zone in here. So something of that sort. Because again, yesterday we didn't have this heavy supply zone made by this huge candle, but today we have that. So the first demand zone, that's where they picked up price yesterday, is also in a supply zone. So I would want to, if that trade were to validate, I would want US 30 to come back lower. So that's going to be the markup for today. So, and again, based off of this, if this does validate, this is a trade I do see happening post 12 p.m. Eastern time. So this lines up with that talk that I had with you guys, that I'm not looking to be taking trades on Friday before 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I don't think I'll probably even end up canceling the Friday live session and just be sending the markups that I'm looking at. But this is a trade for maybe later on today. Also, it does line up with the 250-point manipulation away from psychological level. So this also lines up with the buy that I took, or we went over the live session earlier this week. So the historical, psychological, I'm sorry, did I say historical? The psychological level, that's what I meant. Psychological level is 39,000. So within this psychological levels, you either expect price to be manipulated either 250 points above or 250 points below before any retracement. So this zone, this demand zone here, is around that 250-point manipulation away from 39,000. So it's around 38,747, 750 area. So which would be perfect for them to manipulate price for right now, between now and 12 p.m. or 11 a.m. when London session closes. And then after then, it's just the New York liquidity. So this looks more likely for maybe a trade later on in the day. For gold here, this is a 4-hour trade. 4-hour on the green zone, 4-hour on EU. So nothing Nothing else on the hourly for EU and US 30. On the 4-hour time frame, nothing for US 30, nothing for gold. We have a pending break and continuation entry here on gold, but we have to wait for 3 hours for this to materialize. So this will be later on in the day at 1 p.m. So I'll probably look at this also at 1 p.m. as well. Same thing here. We have well, let's see the zones we have here. No, so I wouldn't take this trade later on in the day as well, because if you're looking to buy, you want to buy when there's demand. If you're looking to sell, you want to sell when there's demand. So yeah, so this break and continuation, even though it were to close, we just have a bunch of suppliers or supply in here. So this wouldn't be a trade I would be looking to take, as much as it may validate as a break and continuation. So remember, the zones is just an additional confluence. You'll get fewer trades at the end of the day or at the end of the week, but you'll get more highly probable trades, especially if they do line up and hit. On the 4-hour time frame, this might be that test and rejection right here. But again, we'd have to wait for 3 hours for that trade to validate. There's an entry I'd seen on EU. I think we marked it up, right? Yes, this one. So let's see how this one goes, and see if we'll get this trade right there. So this lines up with everything, lines up with the zones. So right now, I wouldn't be opposed to taking a trade that lines up with the zones, like on a Friday, even though it's before 12 noon. So here what I will do, I will then now go to, so I don't take it on impulse. So I want to go and see this one. So this is the same trade I've been following yesterday. So if you see this trade right here, what happens, so if the only way I would take a trade, an SAR trade on the closure of a candle is if, so let's assume here, so just as an example, I know that's not what's lining up, but let's assume we had a test and rejection here and the candle closed immediately here. Okay, and then I see that this trade has validated, and then it's the zones indicator shows me that there's a lot of demand there. If the candles do close in and around that zone, yes, I would take that entry or that trade on the closure of that candle. However, if my trade was based off of here, so remember, this SAR entry is based off of this zone right here. Now, when we turned on the zones indicator, there was no demand here. This demand is based off of one candle. I'm not going to be trading demand or supplies that are based off of one candle, because they can easily be taken out by an opposite. If it's a demand zone based off of one candle, if you have a lot of supply coming in, it's going to be mitigated or taken out. So you want to be trading these supply zones within supply zones or demand zones within demand zones. So ideally zones that are overlapping. So the only way in this instance, since yes, this SAR entry is valid, however, based off of the zones indicator, always ask yourself, where would price be going to pick up liquidity? So looking at this entry right here, you can see this demand zone within a demand zone here, and I want it to go lower. So there's that demand zone within that demand zone, and then we have another small demand zone within a demand zone here. So give me a second, an overlapping demand zone. So in this instance, yes, you can take it on impulse, but if you guys remember, I told you guys about the breakout scanner, right? Within the breakout scanner, we have this little green crosses and red crosses. So this, again, is one of the earliest indicators that you can get for a reversal. So what I want here, I want price to come in to this green zone right here. I'm not going to enter on impulse first. I'm going to wait for them to pick up that liquidity. And then you know what's going to happen. On the breakout scanner, the crossover, these are the crossover buys and crossover sells. So I will wait for a green X on the 1 minute time frame. So remember, the 1 minute time frame will give you like one of the earliest entries. So I'll wait for that. And if that does happen, I will be taking the buy on EU right there. So it's as simple as that. So the only way I default or I move over to using the crosses to get that earlier entry is if the SAR zone that I was waiting on wasn't in a buy or in a sell zone. So same thing about this US 30 trade, and I can go to that US30 trade that I said I wouldn't take on the 4-hour time frame. So this US30 trade right here, I'm sorry, the gold trade on the 4-hour time frame, if this gold trade does validate, based off of this, I'll just mark it up right here. If this gold trade does validate, so it's a pending break and continuation buy. So if this gold trade does validate on the 4-hour, turning on the zones indicator, if I want to buy right here, I want to see buyers sitting here. So if I turn on the zones, it's only sellers that are sitting there. Okay, that's perfect. So it doesn't mean that the SAR setup would be invalidated automatically. So yes, the SAR would still be valid. However, I would then ask myself, on this 4-hour time frame, where is the next area of buyers sitting? So in here, the next area of buyers. So this is just one demand candle or one demand box. So again, I'm not doing demands based off of, or supply and demands that are based off of one candle. So you can see here on the 4-hour, as much as I can try looking for buyers, the next demand zone within a demand zone is 2018. So there's no way a 4-hour candle is going to drop maybe like 30 pips without any major news. So at this point, I go ahead and cancel it and cancel such a trade. Because remember, I told you guys, the higher the time frame you go, the more distant supply and demand zones will be. So if you're trading a 30-minute setup, you'll probably have those supply and demand zones close together. But if you start going to the 1-hour time frame, you'll have a supply zone and demand zone, like for example, we see on gold being like $30 away from each other. So for such a trade, you just delete it and say, I'll just look for another trade setup based off of other time frames. But when those trade, like for example here, I wish this was like I wish we were looking for sales on gold, because if we're looking for sales on gold here, you see we have a supply zone within a supply zone, right? And let us, so I know I'm not looking for sales. I know, and this EU trade will take a little while before we get this crossover here. So I'm not worried about missing that just as of yet. Here on gold, if anybody is looking for sales here, and I'm pretty sure we probably have a double SAR on gold. Maybe we do, maybe we don't. Let's see.
I want to take sales, but I'm not doing nothing right now until 10 after 10 o'clock noon hit.
Yeah. So
Because
this
like
is perfect.
whatever's happening now is gonna retrace at
This
some
is
point.
perfect sell for gold. However, it's not based off of an SAR. So this is 2058, 2054. So this is the 4-hour time frame. But you do see that supply in there. So maybe the hourly time frame has something for gold. Yes. Yes and no. Hourly time frame. This is tricky. Hourly time frame, we have this 2052 zone. So let me just mark this up real quick. I know I'm not looking for sales on gold, but just trying to get, yeah, but I do see a nice sell on gold here. But if we go back, this is the hourly time frame. Okay, so this is a nice one, right? This is break and continuation. So this is a perfect sell on gold. You have break and continuation, and then you turn on the zones indicator. Once you turn on the zones indicator, you can see where they got that demand from. So here, if I was taking sales on gold, what I would do here is wait for price. Let's see where those zones are. Wait for price. So let me get this markup. Wait for, if this does close, wait for price. I wouldn't sell gold at that SAR level. I would wait for it to come here in this zone and then do something like that. So if I were taking sales on gold, which I'm not, but that's how I would trade. Because if this was, if this trade does validate, it will be like a break and continuation of a double SAR zone. But, and this is how, if you guys remember, we were getting faked out on a lot of trades. The reason I figured the reason we were getting faked out on a lot of trades was because price, yes, our SAR levels were nice and perfect, but price was going to grab liquidity. So we would get such a trade where, in this example, price would come back to our SAR entry, and then we enter the sell here, and then price goes maybe goes into profit a little bit or reverses back up just a little bit, and then stop hunts us, and then price jumps all the way back down. So when I back tested that, I realized that a good amount of those trades that we got stop hunted on, they were coming to pick up liquidity. So in this instance, you just wait for price to, and price can easily come back here to your SAR zone and melt back down. It doesn't have to go back up and pick up that liquidity. So yes, by doing this, you'll also miss some nice trades as well. But in this instance, what I realized, price goes, you ask yourself, Stephen always talks about this, price moves from one pocket of liquidity to another. So if they're to take those sells, it's better to wait for price to come here. And then once price is in this zone and has picked up liquidity, find another confluence to enable you to enter that trade. You can enter on impulse if you're an impulse trader. For me, since I'm not an impulse trader, the nearest thing I've seen is this crossover buys and sells that's built into the breakout scanner. But anyway, so I'm not taking a sell on gold. I was just showing you guys how, if I were looking for sells on gold, that's how I would do it. So I'll just return this back to what it was. And you can see US 30 as well, right? US 30 as well is coming back down, but I doubt we'll get that break and continuation on the hourly time frame. But even though we do not, you can see where price is going to, right? Price is going to our liquidity zones. Or to our supply and demand zone. So if we get here, that's fine as well, because if price comes down here, we can get a test and rejection entry, or we can get a break and continuation entry later on in the day. So again, there's no rush on that. But just want you guys to see how price is coming to the zones that we are identifying as those supply and demand zones. But here, so other than that, US 30, so my two trades of the day will probably be US 30 and EU trade. So this EU, if we turn on the zones, so we have EU exactly where we want it. So here for this trade, the only things holding EU from falling down is this demand zone within a demand zone, and also this small demand zone within a demand zone here. So if EU breaks this demand zone here, then it's going to free fall until this next level right here. So I'm comfortable taking a buy on EU based off of where EU is right now, because even though I was to wait for EU to come down here and enter the buy at that 1 minute time frame using the crossover, you can see the stop loss is well below here. So I wouldn't even, fingers crossed, even if I were to get stop hunted on such a trade, I wouldn't feel bad, because below here, I'm entering at the most optimal zone for buyers based off of where price is. So we'll just go back up. So all I'm waiting for is a crossover buy right here. And you'll see that green X. So I want EU to keep dumping and dumping and dumping. And if you guys remember, this looks like a typical, if I go to a higher time frame, what does this look like to you guys? You'll probably see it on a higher time frame. So this looks like, this is accumulation, right? So what happens after accumulation? You have manipulation, and then you have distribution on the way back. So this looks like that typical accumulation, manipulation, distribution pattern. Some might even call it, or some also call it a Judas swing, whatever. So I do want EU to go down as far as it can before I get that crossover buy here. So you'll just see that it's going to be a green X similar to this one's right here. And that's what I will take for EU. And I know we did take a EU trade last Friday as well. Unfortunately, that got stop hunted. And by last Friday, we weren't using the supply and demand zones to look at where price is going. So we'll see how this one goes. My other trade of the day, so there goes US 30, right? What were we looking? Okay, so US 30 also test and rejection. So price has come to us first. So same thing with US 30. Price has come to us first before giving this person a 1:1 risk to reward, right? So here you have two choices. You can either wait for a new setup, either a test and rejection setup, or you enter this with the zones indicator. So this is perfect right here. Now here for US 30, we do the same thing. So the US 30 trade has validated, the EU trade has validated. So I already know that I have two trade setups that have validated. Perfect. So EU, I'm waiting on that crossover buy. So US 30 as well, waiting on that crossover buy. So if we go to US 30, in order for me to take that US 30 trade, I need to see a crossover buy that lines up here on the 1 minute time frame. So we'll just wait and see where it is. And if it does fire up, I'll be taking the US 30 buy as well. So yeah, so US 30 hasn't come up as well. So let me do something here. Let me change this to symbol so that we can have both of them side by side. Yes. So if I do take those, they came faster than I wanted, because I was hoping for them to come like around 12 noon. But if they do present themselves right now, that's fine to me. I will take them. So we have US 30 on the, so US 30 already validated. I'm sorry, US 30 came back to the zones we wanted. So this was test and rejection. And this is again why I also prefer not to trade during market open, because you can see if you took this trade when it came back, if you took this trade when it came back, this one, hopefully you could have set break even on this one. But for, if you're waiting for price to come to like that demand zone, you still would be waiting on the trade to line up. Shit. And you can see how fast that shit went. And we probably have news. Let's see. So both of them spiked up. So this is the crossover buy we're looking for right there, that X. So again, if this is overextended, depending on where it closes, if the candle is overextended, I'm not going to take it. I'll just wait for another one.
So I was waiting for news.
This is US 30. So again, just waiting on that green candle right there. Same thing with EU. If it does close as overextended or high up like that, I'm not going to take that. I will wait for another crossover entry. So just about being patient there. But anyway, yeah, so those will be, so that would be the EU trade. However, it's too extended for my liking. So EU at this point, I'll wait for EU to come back down and hopefully get another crossover entry. The other one that I can enter, or the other way I can enter, is get a retest of this 9 EMA, which is the yellow one. And that way it wouldn't be too far down. So let's see if we get a retest of that 9 EMA right there. But even then, since this is what we are waiting for, you still need to measure to know where somebody would be achieving 1:1 risk to reward, so that if price gets here first, before coming down to you, you go ahead and forget about the trade. So what I would be looking for here on EU, looking for price to come retest the 9 EMA and then go back up right there. US 30 still waiting on that. All right, so I'd want US 30 to go back down a little bit further down, and then give that move up. I wish we got those trades before the news. That would have been a nice one. They would ideally be at break even. But looks like even other than EU, if we had gotten the US 30 trade even before news, it would have still gotten taken out at break even. But yeah, EU might reverse from where it is, because I've been watching this zone since yesterday. But if we do come back to this 9 EMA, that's a trade I would want to take, or I'd be willing to take as well. Watching this US 31 closely as well. So here also liking, so there goes that X. So liking this higher lows being created there. Let's see. And again, don't need the candle to be too extended on US 30. Just wait on it. If it closes, I want to get the retest of that 9 EMA, which is the yellow line. All right, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. Where's this account? 3, 2, 1. We need that to close with that X. Okay, so we didn't get closure with that X, so still gonna wait for that X, that crossover buy. If you want, you can always wait for, so here we also have a test and rejection entry, right? So you can wait for a new trade setup based off of this trade, I'm sorry, test and rejection setup right here. And also with this test and rejection setup, so for this test and rejection setup right here, so here's another markup for you guys. Markup. Hourly bullish low zones. Okay. Here. This zone right here, which also lines up. Let's see if EU comes. I don't know if anybody got into that 9 EMA. That was the 9 EMA retest. And I like how EU is moving a little faster now. I didn't get into EU. Let me see if it gets that retest. I'm watching US 30 more because I know this one moves faster. This is just to get that X. Tests and rejection of this zone. So this is pending. All right, so that would be, if you want to wait for this one, sure, you can wait on that one. Personally, I will, because we have two that validated, so we'll see if we can get that crossover here. What did gold do? So gold, nothing here for gold. EU is looking very good. I missed that bounce. But that was the 9 EMA retest that I told you guys. That is it right there, the yellow. So unfortunately, I didn't catch this one. I think I was looking at US 30. So I'll focus more on the US 31. If EU comes back down further enough, I can probably take it. But if none of this line up, not to worry, just watch for, look at the charts, same zones around 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time or after then, and you'll probably find this trades just replaying. So here, that's where you'd be setting break even if you did take the bounce of that 9 EMA. So there goes that US 31. I'm not in it just as of yet. Same thing, we'll wait for the retest of this yellow 9 EMA. But even then, these things are just moving so quickly. To me, like this, huge candles is a major red flag. So you want, when this crossover buys or sells are triggered, you don't want huge candles triggering them. So If it comes back, retest the 9 EMA, I'll hop in. But EU was a nice example of that retracement. So let's see if we get this. No need to rush. We still have the test and rejection right here on the 15-minute time frame. I was hoping to catch that right up. All right. So if you get into this trade again, I'll be counting 0.75% risk. Personally, of course, I'll be going in with my normal 1% risk. Just need the retest of that yellow, which is the 9 EMA right here, and then I will be taking it. But this happened so quickly. But even then, in order to avoid FOMO, that's why I've drawn this blue right here so that I know anybody who's taken the trade, regardless of this candle being a bit too overextended, where would they be setting a 1:1 risk to reward? So if this trade gets to this part first before coming back down to test the 9 EMA here, I'll just delete the trade and then I will look to maybe wait for that 15-minute test and rejection setup. Mm. This would have been such a nice one, man. Because I'm looking at, since I'm running two accounts here, I'm looking at this as this would have been a nice 16K day if these two trades were to hit. Mm. Man, I don't think we'll get it for this one. And again, you don't always hopefully you guys.
Rising. I know
Mhm,
you don't do patterns, man, but the one thing that's working for me is W's and M's.
mhm.
Um, when I'm looking for, when I already have a setup though, that's not my setup. But if I see it, then I take it. And on that US 30, I took it. And yeah, I'm in that trade.
Yeah. Patterns, yeah, patterns pretty much. So if you think of patterns, it's the same thing as supply and demand, right? Because for a pattern to form, it must be bouncing off of an area. So it must be bound if it's a double bottom or a W, must be bouncing off of support. So it's pretty much the same thing, but different way of looking at it. Come back. Let's see how far back is this? 3 minutes. Based off of where this is. Let's see, give me 1 second. 890, 895, 895. The 9 EMA is at 884. It's 884. 884 minus 50 is 834. This is tricky. This here is tricky. This is an interesting one. Let's see. Let's see how this plays out. Because if this 15-minute closes, I mean, ideally you'd be looking for a price to retrace back to this SAR zone, but we have nothing but demand zones here. The reason I'm looking at that is this buy, if we do get it, and I don't think we'll get it, is like halfway the move up. Ideally, this is the most optimal trade, but I don't think US 30 will come back down this far. But we will see.
Well, it's Friday, so I'll move my break, my stop loss to at least a 1-to-1, and I'm just gonna let it run now.
Yeah. Mm, mm, mm. think this one closed 50 seconds. Ah, man, that was so close. All right, so this one is ideally at a 1:1 risk to reward. So I'll go ahead and delete this. That was so close. That was a close one. And you know, if anybody took that trade, or if anybody took any of the US 30 setups, you should be at a 1:1 risk to reward. So go ahead and set break even or just follow your trading. And that trade ideally had no drawdown as well. But anyway, so based off of that, there's nothing really to look at more for US 30 here. So this one will close as a break and continuation. So the trade has validated up here. But of course, and you can see what happened to EUs, right? So you remember that accumulation, manipulation, distribution. So yes, the trade setup has validated for US 30 here, but of course I wouldn't take it because it's overextended and price is far away from the SAR. So I would expect a retracement back down, which I do not think that we will get maybe right now, because we're also in some demand zones. I know we're approaching some supply zones. So I'm looking at where price may reject or come back down to get a buy from, and I'm seeing this zone right here. So what I would anticipate here for US 30, again, the zones just tell me where the buy or where the area of buying would be. So we already know. So this first trade, the one we talked about, would be at a 1:1 risk to reward, and you'd be on your way to full TP. So I go ahead and delete that. So for this one, this has already validated, but again, I'm not entering due to overextension, but I'm interested to see where somebody would be setting break even at. So if the trade gets to this zone first before coming back to me, I go ahead and delete the trade and forget about it, and then just wait for a new trade setup. So this way of doing the zones, you do get fewer trades, but you can see the quality of the trades you're getting, right? The quality of, so same thing about this EU trade, right? This you should be at break even if you took that EU trade. Unfortunately, missed that. It happened too quickly, and for this one, I was just analyzing US 30, so that's why I missed that one. But if you took this one, set break even as well, so you'd be at break even for 2 trades. This US 30 trade, depending on where you so this one did not give us like a 9 EMA retest, but I'm just curious to see when it would hit TP. So I won't mark it up because it did not satisfy any of our requirements, but I'm curious to see where it would be hitting TP. So somewhere around that zone. So this would be a nice 1.5% or no. So this one did not meet any of our requirements just as of yet. Yeah, but EU, you'd be on your way if you took the 9 EMA bounce, which is what we were waiting for, and this happened right there. You'd be on your way to a 1.5% daily gain or gain for the day. Let's see on this US 31. What else are we looking for? So gold, nothing on gold unless you get a new 15-minute setup here for gold. This would be a break and continuation. Looking at the zones, we are in a supply zone. So even though this trade would validate, I wouldn't be selling gold at that zone. I would wait for gold to come back to 2046, exactly where it picked up that demand, because we have an overlap of demand areas. So not interested in any buys on gold right now. Given that it's Friday, I do see gold pumping probably to 2090 or 2080 today, but only because it's a Friday. Because remember, Friday is a directional day. The direction price chooses to take, it will probably take that direction until like 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time before any major move. So I'm not really looking to take my chances on any of those. And look at that EU trade. This one was nice. So this is the part of, so you remember when I told you guys, you can either do like impulse entries. For me, it's just because I'm not an impulse trader, right? I'm not really an impulse trader. I tried to shy away from impulse trading, but this one trade came exactly. If we turn on the zones, you can see how important those zones are. So that's all you need. And this is similar to what we would have caught for this one. So the difference is for the impulse trader, they would have caught that impulse and they would have gone straight into profit. But this was a news move, right? This happened ideally due to news. But also, news could have gone the other way, right? So for the impulse trader who may have entered on impulse here, news could have manipulated price and EU could have sunk first before going all the way back up. So it doesn't mean that impulse entering on impulse will always win every time, because you can always have that manipulation against your position. But on the other hand, you could have had an impulse, like a trader like me waiting for the confirmation, and they got the trade impulse to the downside, went to the next area of liquidity, and then you got an entry on the crossover indicator, like at a better entry below there. But yeah, so same thing. If you look at this, so always remember that term or those terms. Price moves from one area of liquidity to the next. So if this was before that major news, and I don't even know what news it was, they had to go and pick up liquidity at some point. So as much as, and you can see for this trade, so remember this trade, this was a test and rejection. The trade validated here. So this one, you can see how, as much as you could have taken this trade here, you could have gotten close to being stopped out, or you could have gotten slipped because of spread or slippage or whatnot. So you can see how we were encountering some of those stop hunts. So it doesn't mean that most of the times we are right with our bias for the day. So as much as we may get stop hunted, most of the times the trade comes back in our direction. So most of the times our daily bias is always on spot. The issue comes in with the stop hunting, and with using the zones indicator now, you are able to minimize. You're still going to get stop hunted at some point, and some points, yes, you're still going to be wrong, or your bias may be a little wrong. But the times you're going to be stop hunted by using the zones now will be fewer than they were before. So anyway, I feel bad for missing this US 31 and also this EU one, because I would have been up like 4% today only. But anyway, other than that, I really don't see, and this one as well, this one is on its way to 1:1. So I would have to wait for a new trade setup for myself later on in the day. But I don't see any other thing to look at here. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask. But I don't think I'll hang on any longer because I was waiting for US 30 to come back down, but I told you guys, based off of where it was, we had price closing above this demand zone and price coming from this demand zones right here. So I didn't see it coming back down just as of yet, and that's fine. So I will either try to catch a trade post 12 p.m. Eastern time, or just wait until Monday. So for the week today, or actually for the month, so February, we ended up February at break even. So February was a tricky month. I'm just glad that it's break even and not really like a losing month. So the first trading day of the week or of the month of March is no trades today. If we would have taken the EU and US 30 trades, you see, we could have started the month off with a 3% gain, but unfortunately, no official trades. So even in my journal, my 200K is at break even. Oh, I'm not signed in. My 200K is at break even. So nothing else. But yeah, if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask. If not, that will be it for the day. And I will catch you guys next week on Tuesday for the next trading. Yeah, so right now I would expect all of these instruments to keep pumping. Gold, I do see gold, where are we? 2060. We'll probably catch 2090 or 2080 today. So they'll probably try to squeeze out everybody that's trying to sell gold or that has been trying to sell gold since yesterday. But anyway, see you next week, guys. All right, peace.